Hello and welcome back to Rational Man, your island of stability in the golden age of bullshit. Today's topic is time travel. Now I know we've probably touched on this a few times before, and I know each and every one of us has certain ideas, hopes, and dreams concerning time travel. Most of them are bogus. But I have some good news and some bad news, although neither one of them is going to make you happy. The good news is time travel is in fact possible. The bad news is it's only possible in forward. Reverse is stuck, so is fast forward. So essentially we're just going to keep traveling in time the way we always have, one day at a time, as it were. Now, as I was told many, many years ago, I think it was kind of a joke, that time is nature's way of making sure that everything doesn't happen all at once. As clever as this may seem, it's also wrong, because in fact everything does happen all at the same time. The only time that anything can happen is right now. You cannot do anything in the future or the past. I've tried. You can, for example, say you can snap your fingers a second from now. Okay, go ahead, do it. There, you see, you couldn't. Every time you're about to snap your fingers, you had to wait till it was right now. You see, for example, let's say I want to snap my fingers a second ago. Go ahead, do this with me. Try to snap your fingers 1 second ago, okay? First of all, you start by not snapping your fingers. All right, now go back and snap your fingers. Can't. Oh my goodness. Well, never fear. We have an article in a semi-reputable magazine, which I'm not going to name because it might embarrass them and it would be indiscreet of me to do so. But this article kind of says that you can travel in time, but you have to know the new rules. The new rules. Well, time travel a la Terminator and Michael J. Fox, all that stuff is out the window, as you probably figured. However, this guy postulates that since time, space-time in specific, is warped or may be warped, it could get warped far enough that time could form a complete loop where your future and past are kind of the same. Now, in this future-past loop, anything you do in the future suddenly becomes fixed as it was in the past. So if you meet your future self in this time loop, when it comes time for you to be that future self, you have to do whatever it was you saw yourself do the first time. Exactly the way you did it. Or in his own words, it can't have happened because the space-time paradox is not allowed. Any loop that would form a paradox is automatically not allowed. Not allowed, you say. By who? He never says. But in his world, there's somebody watching to make sure that paradoxes do not happen. Interesting concept. Well, let's say, for example, though, you don't want to do what you saw yourself do. He says you can't. You cannot not do it. You have to do it. And he says the reason that people have a conceptual problem with this is that somehow they cling to their free will so tightly that it's impossible for them to understand that they have to do it, even though it's in the future and hasn't happened yet. And I would ask you, Sean, personally, is this the only reason people have trouble with this theory, do you think? Or could it be something else? Just saying. Well, let's find out empirically whether or not there is somebody out there who is refusing to allow paradoxes, won't let it happen. And all of you can do this at home too. Let's go ahead and divide by 0. As you know, dividing by 0 creates something of a paradox. Oh, dodged a bullet. There you have it, folks. Paradox police, don't worry about it. They're not out there. No one's watching. All right. Now, you may ask yourself, what is the main problem with his theory? First of all, the main problem with his theory, as with so many theories today, is he didn't know what the hell he was talking about. People often assume that time and events are inextricably linked. This is a mistake. Now, if time could go backwards, you have to ask yourself, could you recreate events backwards? Obviously, conservation of mass and energy and momentum, all these things say no. In fact, the matter is, time may be going up, down, or sideways, and we have no way of knowing. The reason I say this, well, let's start out by, first of all, examining how we know time is flowing, or how we make ourselves believe it. First thing off is we measure time by measuring events. In the olden days, we used sand going through an hourglass, or water, or checking the position of the sun in the sky, or things like that. Modern methods are perhaps a little more accurate. We now measure the vibrations of quartz, or the pulsations of a cesium atom, or some such thing. But it still comes down to the exact same thing. We measure time by counting events. And it's sort of incestuous, because, you say, well, events are regulated by time, but we only measure time by events that we assume that are regulated. Well, science is a lot like that sometimes. You can't avoid it. Let's just go ahead and imagine to ourselves, let's say to ourselves, what if time and events are not linked? Well, the first thing we're going to do is look at a parable that I've designed to equate time to driving in a car, since that's a very accessible metaphor to most of us. Let's say your car represents your time machine, or in fact time itself, if you'd rather. Now, we're going to be taking this car and driving down a hill. Or at least we think we're driving down a hill. It may be, in fact, that we're not. But let's go ahead and just say that we are. We drive down the hill, we look around, the scenery's the same as we expect it to be. Everything's going smoothly when we decide to back up. So we put our little time machine or car in reverse and we drive back up the hill, and we expect to see the stuff going backwards now as we go up the hill. If time and events are linked, this is what we see. We see everything going in the same order but backwards. Now let's assume that for some reason our transmission in the car doesn't work, or maybe we don't have a drive line or some such, who knows what. We're driving down our car, time machine, hill, and we do the same thing. We say, well, let's drive backwards, watch time go backwards. We put it in reverse. We look at our speedometer, it's going maybe 100 miles an hour in reverse. We should see yesterday any second now. But as we go along, we're still going downhill. The scenery is still passing the same way as it always has. It'd be easy to assume that our time machine is broken, or that somehow it doesn't work. Maybe fine. Maybe your car is going 100% backwards. Maybe events have taken no notice because they're not related. The things inside your car, the state of your car, has nothing to do with the state of the outside or the events. So as you see, it keeps going. You think, well, hard to say, right? Well, that's about as simple as I can make it, given a 10-minute window to explain everything to you. The main idea is to decouple your concept of time and events being linked, because there is absolutely no evidence that it is. Admittedly, there's no evidence that it isn't, but it's just as illogical to assume that it is as it is to assume that it isn't. Of course, this kind of screws with your concept of time, because there aren't really the words we have to describe what I'm talking about yet. We're just not fluent in this method of understanding time. If you have trouble with this concept, don't feel bad. It just means you're probably sane. Now, if you have any comments or suggestions, go ahead and tell me. Alternate points of view, of course. Write to me at ask@rationalmanshow.com, as always. And next week we'll either praise or ridicule your suggestions as befitting. No, praise. We don't ridicule. We don't ridicule. It's not our thing. So until then, we will see you next week. Keep the faith.